Welcome to In the Seams, a podcast by Broken and Mended with your host, David Heflin.
All right, well, this is David Heflin. I want to welcome all of you guys back to In the Seams. I know it's been a while since I've been on here to share anything with you, but I'm excited today because I got a special treat where I've got a couple of guys here. It might get a little confusing in the conversation as both of them are named Jeremy. If I need to differentiate, we've got Jeremy Harrison and Jeremy Wright, so I'll probably just say Jeremy H or Jeremy W as we go forward. But my connections with them are very different. I've known Jeremy Harrison for many years, a couple of decades, and we're very good friends and have known each other's stories, both with chronic illness and many other things for quite a while. And Jeremy's wife, Holly, has been suffering with chronic illness, and we'll have him talk to us about that in a little bit. But ditto for Jeremy Wright, who also has a wife who's suffering with chronic illness. By the way, both Jeremys are in ministry, and so they've had that, kind of dealing with the ministry along with dealing with a spouse with chronic illness. And I haven't known Jeremy Wright for very long, known him maybe about a year. We were just talking about that a moment ago, but have enjoyed getting acquainted. But I really wanted to have both of you here today, and I appreciate you guys being here because we really need to be able to, I think, bring attention to the fact that chronic illness is not something that impacts only the person who's actually suffering with the disease or the pain. It's something that impacts everyone in the family. And it does on many different levels. I mean, I think it does in terms of how it impacts the way that you're living out your married life and living out your family life. But I think also you guys have probably experienced a burden for the suffering of your wives too, and have wanted to help them, and maybe at times have felt helpless. I mean, I think that's something that chronic illness does to all of us. It kind of certainly doesn't leave any illusions of control. So let me, what I'll do is I kind of go through these questions, guys, is I'll just probably alternate which one if I ask you to speak first. I'll let Jeremy H. take the lead as we start with this first question, but thank you both for being here. And Jeremy, just give us a little background, if you would, to begin with. Describe the nature of your wife's chronic condition and just, maybe how long she's been living with it, how long you guys have been living with it.
Yeah, thank you, David. Thank you for having us on. Thank you for this ministry that touches so many people. It's blessed our lives. So I'm honored to be a part of this podcast today. So Holly has had chronic pain since I've known her, and we met when she was 18, and she's had that pain since she was really a child. She thinks back to even age 10 or so. She's had just some joint pain and muscle pain, and we've seen many doctors, many specialists, spent much time, energy, and money trying to get answers and usually not getting anything definable. And not a lot of remedies have helped. Nothing I can do. Massaging doesn't help, and the things you try. And she's tried, gluten-free diets and other alternative ways to eat to try to alleviate certain allergens and things like that. And nothing has really helped. And so it's been a long journey for her. She's kind of now at the point in her early 40s of almost resignation to dealing with pain the rest of her life. Almost no hope anymore. We had hope earlier. Maybe we'll get an answer from somebody, and just seems like that's not coming for us yet. So we're kind of at a point of just how do we manage this for her and make her life comfortable and livable.
Well, thank you for that, Jeremy. And I think even as long as I've known you, I didn't realize it went back that far. So that was eye-opening for me as well. Jeremy, W, how about you and your situation with your wife, Alicia?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been married since 2007, and the first sign of symptoms was Thanksgiving 2019. So yeah, kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. We have kind of had to adjust and learn to live with disability that kind of popped up unexpectedly, right? And so we're 3 years in. Thanksgiving this past year was kind of a monumental anniversary, and with it falling around that time, came with kind of the heaviness of some of the same things you mentioned, Jeremy, just of the recognizing hopelessness in the sense of every ologist, neurologist, orthopedist, rheumatologist, right, and going through all the spectrum, and we're still undiagnosed. We're under the care now of a specialist at Vanderbilt in rheumatology. So we're 2 visits in, and we're waiting on a third. Our last visit was 1st of December. Our next one is less than a month out now, March 6th. So we're just under a month from our next one. But so far we haven't been able to get any answers. It's just what it's not, right? It's not Lyme disease. It's not MS. It's not this particular thing. So they're narrowing us down to complex regional pain syndrome or a form of fibromyalgia. But the big picture for us lately has been that same thing. Okay, let's adjust to this being what life looks like, for the rest of our days. And so coming through that same thing of looking for, a place of confident hope in the right now while we aren't sure of what's going to be coming ahead.
Sure. I that's hard. That's a hard place to be in with the uncertain diagnosis. And most people that have been through this, especially some autoimmune disease issues and things like that, have dealt with kind of a hard to pin down kind of diagnosis. And but I feel for you in that, and hope you guys get some answers. I know each of those appointments then become kind of precious and even sacred moments where they're hard, but man, you want to try to get some answers, and I know how important those are, and how each of those dates kind of loom on the calendar, and and that what's it called? You said a chronic regional pain syndrome. Is that
complex regional pain.
Complex.
Yep.
Yeah, that is an exceptionally painful disease, and of course, fibromyalgia would be too. So either way, dealing with something very very difficult. And let me stay with you for just a minute,
Sure,
Jeremy, and since this is so new, and I'm going to assume that suddenness of it has kind of blindsided you, but as well as just the frustration of kind of getting a diagnosis. But I wanted you to kind of, if you could, speak to maybe some of the initial changes that you faced, some of those early frustrations that this has brought to you and your marriage and your family. Maybe another way of wording it would be, what impact did chronic illness have on you and your marriage in the early days of the illness? And even though you might consider yourself still early days, I mean, you're 3 years in. I mean, you've been dealing with it for a bit now. So how's that impacted you guys?
Yeah, ours sat in progressively. So initially it wasn't quite as intense as it has been in the last 1.5 to 2 years. So initially it almost kind of snuck up as this thing that changes your life, but you don't think it should, right? And so you think, I'm dealing with this pain. Maybe this physical therapy will help. Maybe the chiropractor will help. Maybe, this orthopedist can give me some relief. But there's not really a recognition of how much of a toll it takes. And so the initial inward struggle for us was just the reality of some of those things that we can't do that we desperately want to. So for her, hospitality is just her gift, her joy, and we would have people in our home every Sunday and multiple times through the week, and then you face a new reality that says, I so desperately want to do that, I can't, right? And so you budget all your spoons for a day. You spend all your time in the morning being very careful all afternoon because you have something you want to go to at 6 o'clock, and then 4 o'clock rolls around and you just can't. And so for us early on, grappling with the reality of grieving, right, that kind of loss, and realizing this is something that has been taken away from me, something I used to have that I can no longer enjoy. And so to process that grief early on was really tough. And then just some of the uniqueness. We have been a part of this church family for 12 years now, and they've been amazing and super supportive. And yet, this is a really unique walk, right? And especially early on and without a diagnosis, you're not saying something someone can relate to. You're not saying, I have cancer, I have MS, I have a category that someone understands and then can kind of sympathize with. So just the disappointment with people, and as much as we've had a great support system early on, some of those meaningful relationships in our lives were strained and severed on account of our inability, right? And because it's something you don't really see, for most of the last little bit, getting out on a Sunday morning when she's able is the only time she's out during the week. And so someone who just sees her on a Sunday goes, well, I can tell she's in pain, or this is the conversation. They don't really see all the work and the struggle and the things that go on behind that. So for us to learn, and for our anthropology, our theology of man to kind of catch up with reality and to realize people don't have a category for this. We can't expect them to understand some of these difficulties.
Sure.
And so we use the language now, having processed it, of baggage, right? As someone asks, hey, how are you doing? We think about it as, I'm going to unload some stuff on you. I'm going to hand you some really heavy things. How am I doing? Well, I couldn't get out of bed yesterday. Well, early on, we expected them to oh, please, let me carry that load for you. And it took a while for us to realize not everyone's capable of doing that. So dealing with and processing some of that disappointment and trying to grow in patience and understanding for people that, didn't have a category for it.
Sure. I appreciate you sharing that and pointing that out, because that's not just something that the person that's literally going through the symptoms experiences, but both of you, and having to try to relate that to other people, what's going on, and when do you relate something? When do you, sometimes you just want to say, oh, I'm fine, and go on like everybody else, and so you're always kind of weighing that, I know. And you mentioned the spoon theory. I think most of our listeners will be familiar with that, but if you're not, you can just Google spoon theory. And I forget the woman who came up with it. But it's the basic idea that you've got so many spoons a day, and you choose where you're going to spend them. And when those spoons are gone, they're gone. And so for someone with chronic illness, they may only be starting with 5 spoons in a day, whereas a person who's fully healthy might have 30, so to speak. And then so by the time you've gotten up and gotten ready, you spend a spoon. If you had to go to work, well, you may spend the rest of those spoons and come home and not be able to do anything else. And I think that is helpful language sometimes, to be able to talk with other people. Of course, that's how that theory came about. I know the lady who came up with it was trying to explain to her friend what was going on, and there was a bunch of spoons sitting on a table, and so she pulled them out. She kind of coined that term. She kind of owns the rights to that term or something like that, but I can't. Anyway, but it's a good illustration, or a good metaphor to think about these things. But yes, our relationships with other people, that and trying to explain and relate what is going to be helpful, but you can't ever get it all across. It's always going to be a struggle to know how much to share. And what about you, Jeremy H? What's and yours, again, as I look at it, thinking about, well, let me ask you this, as you think about what we've already been talking about, I want you to just kind of add to that. But I do want to ask you specifically something, because you mentioned your wife, this really goes back into her teenage years, some of the struggles that she's had. Was there a kind of a defining period of time where you guys kind of knew that it was escalating, or you knew you were going to have to do something to start addressing it with doctors? Or is that just really just happened gradually over a long period of time?
Yeah, it did seem to exacerbate after childbirth. For her, it was there in college, in our early years of dating and early marriage, manageable, not debilitating on the daily life as far as that goes. But something, especially after our second child, we have 3. After our second child, it seemed like her body really went into a different gear, with pain, joints, achiness, just really getting through each day, a real battle. And with that comes the death of dreams. The death of dreams of being an active mom with your kids, like getting down and playing, or going to shoot basketball, or like doing things on the bike that aren't possible. Or if she does that stuff, she pays doubly for it the next day, and is really in a bad place. And the death of some of my dreams too. I run. I love to run. I had dreams always of running with my girlfriend, my wife, and that's just not possible, to share those active lives together. I kind of sometimes have, I guess, the equivalent of survivor's guilt for someone who's healthy, because I don't have pain. I'm older than Holly by a few years, and I'm ably active and grateful, but I feel guilty. I would love to give some of that to her and take some of her pain onto myself so we could share something together, but that's just not possible. So I feel a bit guilty that I'm able to be active and she's, in bed and hurting. And another layer too, and this may foreshadow a coming question, so forgive me if I'm getting ahead.
That's okay.
I think, and Dave, you and I have talked about this before with our conversations in the past. The fact that the pain seems to have no purpose is so hard. If we knew this pain had a greater meaning and was doing something better in the kingdom and glorifying the Lord in some unique way, we could probably endure it and find some deep motivation to kind of struggle through that. But it just seems so pointless. I'm like, why would you not take this away from this young woman? Why would you not give this young woman, we've prayed for healing. We've anointed with oil. We've seen all the things, all the ologists that Jeremy W. mentioned. We've done that. We've been around that track many times. And for Holly, just not seeing a purpose or a greater reason for that pain is mentally just overwhelming. I think if we had a reason to endure the pain and saw some good from it, it might be more manageable. But it just doesn't seem to have that purpose.
Sure. And I think if anyone else tries to speak into that, that's kind of thin ice. You know what I mean? Just because that's something a person has to come into understanding in their own time and walk with God, whether they can find purpose in it or not. So that is a really tough issue. I think people are in different places about it, and someone else may come to realization of some kind of purpose in it very early on in their journey, and others may never really feel that. And I think in either case, of course, we're all, and I should mention the audience, I've already mentioned, to our audience, you guys are in ministry, and so I'm sure they understand you guys are faithful Christians. Holding on to Christ is sometimes all that we can do in those situations. Finding purpose is kind of a different, not to say it's an unrelated activity, but it's a different kind of it's just something that's very personal,
It's some way to redeem the pain. Some way to redeem the pain.
Yep.
Yeah. I appreciate you opening up about that. I really do. Let me talk about a little bit with our spouses in terms of, differences in the way that we communicate, the way that we process these things. And because I don't know how this will be for you guys. I know my wife and I are very different about this. I'm a very analytical person, and I'm always thinking about things and outcomes and possibilities. And it's part of the way I process things. And way back when, I was having to go to the Mayo Clinic, I think in 2013. And there were some potential serious, maybe even life-threatening, implications to what we were going there to find out about myself. And I needed to kind of talk about that. Katie couldn't talk about it. For her, it was like, well, we don't know that yet, and therefore, I really can't. I'm not going to go there, because for her, that was just wasn't a very safe place. I guess it was scary to her.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about this, and we've never gone to couples counseling, but I've been to a counselor several times over the years, and kind of talked about different ways in which we could meet each other's needs in that regard, because sometimes I do need to talk about it. And I want to talk about it with her. It just makes sense. She's not opposed to me talking about the in the moment stuff. So I don't want to be clear about that. If I'm having a bad day and I need to talk, I'm just talking about those unknowns, And so we have found that we have kind of different ways of dealing with it and different ways of communicating about it. And we've kind of had to learn to work, through some of that. Have you guys had to discover any of that yourselves? And again, I'll flip back to actually Jeremy H. who continue on that thought, and then go to Jeremy Wright here in a minute.
Yeah, we're different people. Obviously, we have different ways of processing things and communicating. I'm more the emotive thinker and feeler, and I want to verbalize things and have that conversation. Holly is a little more like you, David, and wants to kind of internalize, process on her own for a bit. And when we share, it's usually not, in the same kind of heart language, if you will. And so I often will make a bid or an attempt to talk about it, or how you doing, babe? Like, how have you been this week? How's your pain? And some days that's I'm just making it, handling it, and just kind of a short, curt. That's the usual response, so nothing too deep. But when she does open up, and when it has kind of built up enough that the pressure is to the top, I mean, the emotions spill over for her, and there are tears, and there are questions, and there's emotions toward God that are all over the spectrum, with anger and wanting an explanation, this feeling of unfairness. Those have been very tender moments that I really treasure as her husband, and I just wish again there were some answers that we're able to offer in that situation. But yeah, so I just take that into advisement for myself, and don't prod too much, kind of let her know that I'm always open and available to talk about it, but kind of give her the chance to make the opening remark, and make sure she's ready to go there. Because it's even I, as her husband, can't fully understand what it's like to go through each day with just pain that you're just suffering through and trying to manage. When your best days are, yeah, it didn't hurt too bad, I could get up and do a few things today. When that's as good as it gets, day in, day out, with 3 kids and a wife, as a wife and a husband, the husband, it gets challenging. So I want to give her the first move in those situations.
Yeah, makes sense. And by the way, so I don't think I mentioned earlier that you had 3 kids. Jeremy W., do you have kids in the home?
We've got 4. We've got 13, 10, and then 5 almost 6-year-old twins.
Okay, goodness. So, yeah, your hands are full anyway.
Yeah.
If everyone was healthy and going along smoothly, it's a lot to process. And so, would you add anything to what Jeremy H. said, Jeremy W., about kind of communicating with the wife and how you had to learn to adjust and all that stuff?
Yeah, no, I resonate a ton with that, and sort of the same. From a different perspective, I'm the one who feels less or emotes less, or would say, not super in touch with emotional life in the past. And so as these feelings hit, really the hard part for me was understanding and processing, and then living with my wife, in an understanding way. And so I can remember initially, as a problem solver, as a fixer, I would say, okay, well, here's a need, here's a lack in our home. Oh, I'll fill the gap. Let's hire a babysitter. Let's have someone help clean. Like, let's fill these things, because I thought, oh, let me take this off of you. Not realizing, well, hey, that's something I want to do, and that's, from her perspective, like, that's something it feels like I should be doing. And my penchant for fixing was, not the most helpful way to come into that piece of communication. So it took me a while to learn, hey, come at this from a more understanding perspective, and think a couple of tracks deeper than just, solving the problem.
It's good.
It's a lot of wisdom. We kind of had to pick up the hard way, I know, and but that empathetic listening is important. And again, here I'm kind of relating back now to you guys as a person who's dealing with chronic illness, as I think about my own relationship with my wife, and that's kind of maybe back to kind of what I was getting at, having to, we had to learn kind of how I needed to communicate with her and be heard. And at the same time, I had to also learn what she needed in that too, because it was impacting her life as well. But it impacts everything. I mean, I don't even have in my kind of list of questions here anything about the financial aspects, and just, I mean, this is something that it's a bulldozer to your life. And like you said earlier, Jeremy H., about the kind of the life you envisioned and dreamed of, and the lost dreams that are there. I think both of you have touched on that, and this is not the life I thought I'd be living either. By the way, this isn't the ministry I thought I'd be doing. And so it's a hard one to accept or embrace. And but I appreciate you guys sharing a little bit. I want to stay on the marriage topic, particularly in your relationship with your wife. I think we're back to Jeremy W. here for the start the answer. About a significant challenge you face in your marriage. So I'm talking about just the directly relationship between as husband and wife, and then, but I want to know if there's something on the other side of that. Is there some way that you've learned to grow as a couple because of dealing with this?
Yeah. By God's grace, we're just very similar and complementary people. So we've just really had a happy marriage, and we've been talking just in recent weeks of, man, the joy that's ours by God's kindness in the midst of this, even while so many unanswered questions and things I still don't understand, and how to take good care of her well. I'll mention one I was sharing with someone today. Our girl's birthday, their sixth birthday's coming up at the end of this month, and I need to make the cupcakes for their birthday party because I don't want her to think through that and have to worry about that and do that kind of thing. And so we made some practice cupcakes last night, and there's a reality there in which she really wants to be doing that, and I want to take that off of her in a sense where she doesn't feel like she has to, that the family's cared for and loved. But it's really hard. The difficult thing is escaping that tension of her feeling the guilt, of not being able to do what she wants to do, while her trusting me that I really do want to do this, right? I'm joyfully here. One of the things that I caught pretty early on in starting to listen to other folks who have been wrestling with this for longer, jumped in a non-Christian Facebook support group and just saw the despair and difficulty in so many people who would say, I can't believe that people are still putting up with me. I'm so heavy on them. I'm such a burden. And it's heartbreaking. And I thought, okay, I never want her to feel that. Let me do everything I can. But the complexities of, it's inescapable, right? I do a lot to make up for the her abilities, and so how we wrestle through that tension and how we live in that, and so as I saw that question, I just wrote significant challenge, like Monday, Tuesday,
Right?
Wednesday, right? Every day is its own fresh set of of challenges and tensions, but
Just the days that end with Y, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Man, that's heavy though. That feeling that sometimes you feel when you're the person suffering, that you're burdening others. And you guys are good husbands to your wives going through this. I want you guys to know that, because I deal with a lot of people who have been abandoned by their spouse because of chronic illness. The one time when they needed their spouse to stand by them, so they're the opposite of what you guys are doing, trying to alleviate the burden and want them to know that you're not a burden. You're my wife, and that's a powerful testimony to the love of Christ. Jeremy H., you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I appreciate those thoughts too, Jeremy W. We made promises in our wedding ceremony, right? In sickness and in health, and we don't get to choose what's coming in the future. I made those promises to my wife 20 years ago, and she didn't choose this pain, but I still choose her. And I choose her today. I'll choose her tomorrow and every tomorrow that I'm given. We'd love the pain to go away and be taken and thrown into the abyss away from her, but that has not yet happened. And when a marriage has any kind of conflict, couples have a decision to turn away or turn toward each other. And if there's any, positive thing about this pain that Holly has carried so long, is that we have chosen to turn toward each other and face it together and hold it together and grieve it together and cry about it together. I will not turn away or unchoose her. And so whether it's this issue or another issue, with Christ as the center, when you turn together toward each other and he's in the middle, you find your help there. Doesn't make it necessarily easier as far as what she's feeling, but it gives a layer of commitment and loyalty, because like you said, people have been abandoned and left. I didn't sign up for this, so I'm out,
Yeah.
But in fact, we did sign up for it,
That's right.
for either sickness or health. And so it can be for some a test of devotion and faithfulness to that marriage vow. Because when you're standing on a stage in your early 20s, you think, yeah, we got the rest of our lives together to grow and be healthy, um, and we've had to, consider, housing floor plans that would allow for a wheelchair. And here we are, we're not there yet, but we know that, okay, this may be in the future, at a certain point. So anyway,
Wow.
turning toward each other with Christ in the middle is where you find the help and at least the ability to come together and walk the path in solidarity and the love you share.
Yeah. And we may have already spoken to this next question. And so, but if you want to add anything, I want to give opportunity because we've talked, I think, naturally on and off throughout this conversation about how it's impacted our relationship with God, individually and as a couple. So there's two different ways to, to think about that question. And, before I kind of hand that back over to you, Jeremy H., I was just want to say that, based on what you said earlier about sometimes the struggle is real. I mean, it's raw, and you're in the midst of it. And it's not like we're sitting here talking from a standpoint of resolution, that we're all okay with this, spiritually now and everything. And I think that's going to make it more relatable, honestly, to those that are listening, because, man, that's people are all over the place on this, and so, but let me just let you open up on it for a minute and speak about how this has impacted your walk with God in any way, either as you reflect on it individually or as a couple.
Yeah, great question, David. Thank you. Yeah, certainly it's been a matter of faith and doubt and, why her, as a father of 3 kids, if one of my kids were hurting and I could fix that with a thought or an action, why would I not do that? If one of my children has something that I could alleviate, I would rush. I would do everything I could to rectify that situation. And so the frustration of how long, O Lord, will we pound upon your door? And why would you not want to take this pain away from your daughter? Why would you not want to alleviate this burden she carries, minute by minute, day by day? And so that can lead to frustration, anger, despair, on the part of, praying the same prayer over and over, having the same request, and I know Luke 18 and the widow who continued to go to the king, and I've prayed through that parable with Holly, who've done that. And so it is a challenge, as, kind of watching and being the companion to this suffering, that I know God has the power to heal, right? We know he can still do these things.
Sure.
So just the wondering, why not, Lord? And that's a real point of tension for me as I relate to God and praying for her. And as I said, you kind of eventually reach a point of, well, I guess you're not doing this for us. I guess we're just going to live with this. Is that what the plan is? I guess this is where we are because how long, is this a test of our faithfulness in prayer? Do we keep praying for 2 more decades about this, and maybe when she's in her 60s she'll be pain free? I don't know. Maybe that's in the cards, but that's a lot to carry for her and for us together. So,
Sure. And that, anything you'd want to add, Jeremy W?
Yeah, similar. I feel like it's driven our practice and our theology to their natural ends, in a sense of, with this starting at the end of 2019, the first kind of COVID lockdown period, and then, all the uncertainty as that started unfolding at the first part of that year. I can remember days where she's just in bed, can't get up, can't move, and I would consistently say, babe, this isn't normal, right? This is not how this is going to be forever. We need to know that everything around us is really abnormal right now. And in that moment, we'd cling to resurrection hope, right? We have new creation hope. All things are going to be made new. This is not my forever. And yet we're facing it with the hope of like, okay, but Lord, in light of that, would you make me would you bring that hope to today, like right now?
Right.
Like I know that in the end things are going to be great, but also I'm 36 and I would really, like to live in that hope as we wait for that day. And so, people will do kind of a word of the year thing. We've had words of survival, right? Hope and rejoicing. So we know that we have this confident expectation of joy, and we know that that hope is fixed. We know that it's immovable. We know that it's ours in adoption in Jesus Christ, and yet we really need that hope to invade right now, right? And so for that reason, we're rejoicing. And I think one good evidence of God's grace in the midst of this is it's robbed us of false senses of security and caused us to be really grateful for all of the things we do have, not just spiritual realities, but children, home. Like it's increased our gratitude for things as we realize, hey, I don't deserve this. I didn't earn this. I am given all of this by grace. And so, that joy is a fruit of the Spirit, right? That rejoicing. And so we've tried to drill down into those two things. Give me confident hope, and as you do, cause me to live in joy, right? Even in the midst of right now. God's been kind to do that.
As I listen to both you guys talk, one thought that occurs to me is that it may be in some ways. I understand the one that's going through it, the one that's doing the most suffering, certainly physically, but it's harder. I can relate to this way. Okay. My son now has a chronic illness. Jeremy knows him, Micah, he's 16. We're managing pretty well. Last year was tough. This year's been better. But I can tell you that it was more difficult for me to see him go through that than it was for me to try and push through what I was going through at any time during the last 11, 12 years that I've been dealing with this,
Yeah.
And so it's because you guys have all alluded to it, you want to take it from them, you want to at least be able to share it with them somehow. So, so such a chronic illness is one of the most humbling experiences that, anybody could go through, and both for everybody.
Yeah. There was one night, David, I laid hands on Holly and asked God to transfer her pain to me. I just wanted to take it. I wanted to take all of it, like give this to me, because you want to rescue and help so bad. And when you've done everything that you can do and seeing all the doctors and you're back where you started, maybe even worse, you want to help because you love this person and you're watching them live this life that can't get above second, third gear. And that prayer was not answered. I didn't get that pain, obviously, but I would take it in a heartbeat, if it meant she didn't have it. I think I'm sure Jeremy W. the same thing. Any loving spouse would want to share that burden, if not take it on completely, to say, you know what, let's carry this together. But I can't carry the physical pain, but I can carry you and help carry our family in the ways I can. And I'm not some hero. I'm just some guy. Like, I feel very, very blessed to be Holly's husband. I feel very fortunate that she said yes to me and that we still get to live these 20 plus years together. But yeah, it is the hardest thing about our lives is her pain.
Yeah. I this is on a lighter note, but I did catch I don't know if it was intentional or not, but you made a subtle Lord of the Rings reference in your comments. You know what I'm talking about?
Tell me what it is.
I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you. That's,
sure.
Samwise.
I guess come out subconsciously. Yeah. So
can't miss an opportunity to point that out. So, but that shows.
It's got to be right. Then. It's got to be right if that's the case. Then
yeah, absolutely. Well, this is a question that ones I kind of wrote out ahead of time. I really was interested in what you guys would say about this. So, if you were advising a couple who just had received a diagnosis, and let me even rephrase that since we just learned earlier, Jeremy W., you guys don't even have a diagnosis. So let's just say you're advising a couple that has gone through something similar that you've been through, you're several years ahead of them, in other words, and they're just finding out they're having to deal with this and there may not be a quick resolution. Is there any advice that you would offer them that you wish you would have known? And we'll start with Jeremy W.
Yeah, I can remember summer of 2021, so that's a year and a half in. I think I gained a reputation at the YMCA as the weeping pastor. I would take my boys up and let them swim, and I would sit poolside and read Esther Smith and KJ Ramsey and David Powlison, and I would go, "Oh man, they've been where we're at," and we were a year and a half in and hadn't made that connection with real people in our life yet. And so finding the tribe, finding the resources, finding Broken and Mended, finding Christian Trauma Counseling Network, finding some of those support groups and things like that are out there were just, it was tremendous for us. Friends locally that we connected with, and just sitting down, we've again got a great network. We've got other pastors in the area that love us, but if you haven't had a taste of it, right, it's hard to understand, right? And
Sure.
so, looking for support among the empathetic, right, the folks who have been there, finding that. So while we needed early on to be more patient with the people in our circle who didn't understand and who didn't get it, I feel like for the first year and a half we were in the dark that there was a community out there, right?
Yeah.
So looking for that community online, locally, and trying to plug into it.
Here. And Jeremy H., we know that you've got an appointment to get to, but let me let you have last word on that, and Jeremy W. and I will kind of land the plane after when you have to depart. But
I love that bit about community. That's so key, to have people with whom to share the journey, solidarity, unity, understanding, etc. I had a couple things to that. To find something to be grateful for in each day, to cultivate that gratitude can help that joy stay afloat.
Mm-hmm.
I think, because joy can get drowned and get submerged, and hope can get kind of bowled over by the tidal wave of pain. So finding little things to hold on to each day to give thanks for. And then as far as the advice along with that, for the one who has the illness or the pain, the diagnosis, find things that energize their spirit every day. Find ways or activities or places or music or sights or sounds or something that gives their soul some energy, because they're dog paddling inside. I mean, the physical struggle is one thing, but within that is the mental, emotional, spiritual battle they're facing as well.
well, Jeremy, that leaves us kind of bring us to a close, and we're kind of coming to that point. I appreciate you being able to stay just a few extra minutes here.
Absolutely.
I want to ask, you kind of hit on this a little bit in the way you answered that question, but what you wish existed or was more widely available to support not only those with chronic illness, but also loved ones with chronic illness. Is there anything in your journey that you've been able to find some community? That's good. I remember early on when I was going through, I wasn't able to for a while, and that's part of the reason why I created Broken and Mended, because it didn't feel like there was a whole lot out there that was actually doing support groups. There was some written materials and that kind of stuff, but what does something you wish existed, or you discovered earlier on, or something like that?
Yeah, that's kind of the challenge too. Is the easy answer is support and support groups and folks who are minded to kind of walk alongside. The challenge of that is, I think about someone like Jeremy and getting to know his story and hearing that. Man, I've been so encouraged in the last few minutes, and like, oh man, I want to regularly keep up. Okay, great.
Yeah.
I've got zero margin in my life.
Yeah.
And so the caretakers that we want to put in those positions to, lead support groups and care for folks are relatively maximized, right, in their capabilities. So somebody smarter than me needs to come up with a good strategy for putting that out there. And the flip side of that too is with not just inability for folks to be able to get out or meet, but kind of like Broken and Mended does. Like, here's an online option, here's a Zoom, here's a time when it might be convenient, here's a morning or a evening, and finding a flexible option for people that some of whom can work, some can't, right? And some have kids in school. Our most free time is 8 to 3 every day, where we can kind of get the most done because 3 of our 4 are in school. And that's usually when other people are less available. right?
Right.
And so just the unique dynamic of this kind of situation of life says, man, we all need a support network, but it's difficult to be involved in one because we're all very busy just making these ends meet.
Yeah, and that's a challenge that I wasn't fully prepared for when I got into trying to find people to lead broken and mended support groups. Because obviously I wanted people that could empathize, because they had experience with it and knew the need for that kind of community, but finding people that had enough energy and health to be
Yep.
able to carry that forward has been a challenge. Also the timing, like you talked about, where, we did something too late, we would lose a lot of people that, they hurt a lot more at night, did
Mm-hmm.
something too early. Well, then you lose your crowd that still is going to work or school and that kind of stuff. Um, we are slowly working around to solutions to that. Like tonight, we're starting a new support group. It's actually kind of in mind for some people out on the West Coast. We actually have someone in from Tennessee, but we're starting at 6:30 Pacific time in order because they said, "Hey, you guys are meeting much too early for us. We're still at work," and so we started a group just for those guys in mind and trying to build around that. So as we kind of figure out what those particulars are, I think we're trying to build around that, as we learn. But I'm in the same boat with the resources and kind of margin and how do I just kind of thinking out loud about this now, but how do I kind of uh, get some help doing that,
Mm-hmm.
and that's things we're wrestling with. Can we raise enough money to hire some help and that kind of stuff? But I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. My point is that's a challenge for all of us. That where's the margin to invest in what's important and to invest in what we really want to do and see happen. Um, so hopefully over time, God will give us wisdom in that as we continue to grow and learn. I think particularly about the broken and mended ministry, but it can apply in any sort of ministry that's trying to reach out and connect and support people that are going through this. I know for me, I appreciate anyone that's trying to reach out and do something positive for that community. You mentioned Esther Smith. Uh, Most people in this ministry are very familiar with her and some of the books that she's done and the ministry she has. I was wondering, you mentioned a couple other authors too, which I wasn't as familiar with. Do you remember what you said
Yeah,
earlier?
KJ Ramsey, and
Okay.
the name of the book is escaping me now. Oh mercy! It was in that in that season, and I'm not going to remember it, so I shouldn't try anymore. But the other one was, I'm probably botching the name on this. I believe it's Christian Trauma Counseling, which I think is maybe that Esther Smith's a part of, but
Mm-hmm.
they're hosting an online support group on Fridays, and Kate Brooks has been leading that. She and her wife Nate is soon to be, I think this is public, counseling professor at Southeastern Seminary as they transition from Reformed. And it's just been a tremendous community for Alicia. I think for the last 6 or 7 months, she's been a part of that. And same kind of thing. So they're meeting on a Friday at 1 o'clock, right? And
Yeah.
so whoever can make it can make it. But I
Right.
think that's somewhere between 8 and 10 folks who have jumped into that and just been able to form some good friendships. So yeah, finding that was really helpful. There's a ton of other resources out there that have been really helpful that of course I'll blank on right now, but yeah, Esther's
Well,
was the first one we found.
yeah, I know she's been tremendously helpful to me, and I know to a ton of other people who have this struggle. Of course, she herself has the struggle of chronic illness, and so uh, thankfully she is able to continue and do the things that she does despite that, and be a blessing to people. So, well, Jeremy, we're coming up on about 50 minutes, and I need to bring it to a close here pretty soon. But is there anything else you'd want to add that we didn't cover?
No, you nailed it. I was setting you up with that last one for the softball on that new group that you started for the earlier time.
That's
So
right.
you hit it out of the park.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well,
Yep.
I appreciate you. Appreciate you being with us, and my thanks to both of you. I'm assuming maybe Jeremy H will listen to this playback at some point, maybe with Holly and others. And so great for both of you being with me, and I think this will be a blessing to others as they listen to it. And I thank all our listeners on In the Seams, and hope that this has been a blessing to you, and look forward to being back with you the next time. And so I'll give a shout out to John Shields, who is the editor of this episode, and we appreciate the work that he's doing as well.